This guy can play number 9, 8, 6, 7. He's an asset for anyone, Connor Watson.
Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Offload. My name is Adam Hawse and I'm joined by Mark Geyer and Andrew Webster from The Australian. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, boys.
Let's talk some off-field news in rugby league, shall we? And Connor Watson, such a great player for such a long period of time in the NRL, has been given permission by the Sydney Roosters to explore his options. He's got another 12 months on his deal, but the Roosters have said, hey, we're not going to stand in your way if you can find something better, Webby.
Well, look, it just shows you the squeeze of the salary cap. I know the cliche about the Roosters is that they have the sombrero, but they do have to adhere to it to some extent. It must be a big move for the Roosters in the sense that he's a very popular member of that squad and obviously a very good player. But I'm not surprised with Sandon Smith coming in there. That sort of the crunch is on. He'd be great for Perth, PNG, whoever picked him up. He's an Origin rep and a good style of guy too. So whoever gets him will be lucky.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Reece Robson, obviously, in comes one New South Wales player, and now it looks like another New South Wales player. He's done well, Connor Watson, to find himself in that 17 with New South Wales. There's so many good utilities around. I love the way he plays, and I think he'd be an asset. I know he's got some good mates at Manly. I see him a lot when I go on holidays up the coast every Christmas. He's around Terrigal, and whichever club he goes to are going to be lucky because he's the package. He's a good player, good bloke.
Well, there's a couple of new clubs coming in. What about Perth Bears?
Yeah.
Would they be interested?
I think of course they would be. Yeah, of course they would be. Why wouldn't you be in him?
Yeah, well, who have they got at number 9? The Bears.
I think at the moment, Wishart.
Wishart.
I think at the moment, but that's, this guy can play number 9, 8, 6, 7. He's an asset for anyone, Connor Watson.
Is he happy, Webby, I'm not sure if you've spoken to Connor, is he happy coming off the bench, which he's done for such a large part of his career, or does he want to nail down a starting spot?
Look, I haven't spoken to him at all, but I'm assuming he's sort of been that super sub in many ways, hasn't he? He's been a Mr. Fix-It wherever he's gone. So, they all like to start, unless they're lazy players. Some are. MG was.
Well, it was a classic clash, wasn't it? Easter Monday, West Tigers v the Eels at Combank Stadium. The Tigers getting up 22 points to 20. But the big talking point out of that game really was Mitch Moses, the Eels skipper, and how he behaved around referee Peter Goff, who's been speared actually for his performance. But he handled the referee, 3 times? Well, when I say handled, he put his hand on it, which is a no-no. So there's been a lot of talk about whether he went too far. There's been a warning letter received from the NRL by Moses about his conduct. MG, did you think he went too far?
Not really. Look, you can't touch referees. Blocker Roach obviously famously in 1988 or something got, a massive suspension and fine for doing it. So did Eddie Ward. And we've come a long way from that. The touching on the shorts or something. It's more so, I think, with Mitchell, the frustration bubbles over too much with him, especially when he's a captain of a team and everybody's watching him for direction. And the referees go to training on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night and they go, oh, man, did you see Moses again at me? They talk. So it's not good for your club to have your captain spoken about behind your back by referees. So he's just got to, he's got to reel it in a touch and be more professional. Let his passion stay with him because that's why he's playing State of Origin, because of his passion. But you've got to be careful when it comes to referees. You're not allowed to touch them.
Ooh, the sternly worded warning letter from the NRL. I bet he's shaking in his boots. Ooh, you know what? You tell me, MG, if you crowded around Bill Harrigan like Mitchell Moses and like other players, and let's name it, James Tedesco does it for the Roosters all the time. If it was Bill Harrigan back in the day and that was you, where do you think you'd be?
I'd be in the
bin.
Yep.
Yeah, I think don't stuff around with warning letters. Start sending them off. Start putting them in the bin for 10 minutes because that's going to stop it. I know from a fan's perspective that was doing my head in on Monday. The amount of times that Moses and Parramatta plays, and look, they're not the only ones. Like every team's sort of than the other. I think if you're going to do it, do what Cameron Smith did back in the day and just talk very calmly, and then you can sit there and I think Matt Chechen once said that Cameron Smith was like a little fireside chat. You'd have a cup of cocoa and you go, oh yeah, well if there's 5 minutes gone and they've had a nice break. and he's got his point across. So, I think there's an art to it, but I don't know. It seemed to have crept into the game far too much than it has of late.
It's crept back into Mitchell Moses' game. It was a big feature a few years ago when Clint Gutherson and Moses ran the Eels. They were always flapping their arms around when decisions went against them. I know Brad Arthur, the Eels coach at the time, really took Moses aside and said, hey, mate, we need to chill you out a bit because you're going to be captain and you can't address referees like that. So it's crept back into his game, and it's something Jason Riles is going to have to jump on, because you're right. I think a sin bin is just around the corner, because Webby, you don't want to see this go through to the grassroots, do you? I know we always say it, but what the kids see NRL level, they'll copy on the weekends.
Well, someone think of the children, for God's sake.
I believe
someone had to say it.
I know parents who have kids or teenage sons and that referee at a junior level, and they tell me constantly the amount of abuse that those teenage referees get is appalling. I've sort of changed the way I talk about referees after doing a big piece with Matt Chechen a few years ago about when he got out of the game, about the death threats that Ben Cummins got after the 6 to go controversy in 2019. The old days are over. You got to respect the referees and the match official, because if we don't, then there won't be any left.
Good game. Well said.
Yeah, look, it's not a Mitchell Moses pylon either. I will say this about Mitchell Moses: he cares. He wants to win every time he crosses that white line. He's out there to win for Parramatta, and you'd rather that than a player who doesn't care. You'd rather,
right.
You just got to do it the right way.
Well, Cam Muster was very similar a couple of years back. He was kind of remonstrating every time, and the hands went up, and obviously Bellamy said something to him, and he cut out of his game, because it's not a plus for your team when you're doing that.
Yep.
It's frustration, and the rest of your team feel that.
And I had a caller on Wide Border Sports point out, quite rightly, that it becomes like the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah.
If you keep doing it every 5 minutes, the referees are going to go, oh, here he goes again.
Yep.
And they don't take you seriously. Anyway, let's move on. Another team is on the agenda, expansion in the NRL. We know it's coming. They need 20 teams. So there's a push for a second Brisbane team. Well, not a second team. How many teams are there now? 3? Yep. This will be the third Brisbane team, yeah. So Shane Richardson, we know where Richo went. He left the Tigers and he's popped up pushing the barrow for another Brisbane team. So what do we think about this? Is this the right place to put another team, the Western Corridor of Brisbane?
1,000%. You know what cracks me up about this, Adam Hawse? I don't eventually call you Adam Horsey. Is that I have been actually writing stories about this, quoting Shane Richardson about a team in the Western Corridor of Brisbane. I looked it up. 2021 was the first time I'd written this piece. And I remember talking to Andrew Abdo and Peter Volandis about it only about a year ago, about where another team should go. And this was in the lead up to Perth getting in, and I said, look, and this is no disrespect to Perth, MG, but I said the AFL are so aggressive in that Western Corridor of Brisbane out to Ipswich. The AFL have, I think, 138 staff just working in that part of Queensland.
Wow.
They wouldn't have that many working at the NRL. So they've got money and they're very, very active in the schools. The Brisbane Lions are based out at Springfield. And the NRL at the time, about a year and a half ago, said, no, we have no plans at all to put a third team in Brisbane. So I find it quite remarkable that they've suddenly done a backflip on it, and all the talk is about the Ipswich Jets going in. I think the problem, again, that surprises me too, because the NRL have not been happy with their last 2 bid proposals to be included in the competition. So if they can get the American private equity that they're talking about into that bid, then that changes things. But, I think it's a no-brainer. That's exactly where the next team after Perth and PNG should go.
Well, the other option is South Island in New Zealand, or another one on North Island as well. I'm easy. I just think we've got to get to a stage where we have 20 teams in the competition, play each other once. Every game's like a finals match. We get to that NFL type league where we have a little bit of a break in the middle of the season for rep footy and stuff like that. So I want 20 teams. I don't know where they're going to be, and to be honest, I don't really care. as long as we get another 20 team.
That whole issue of playing each other once, it's a whole other show. But I disagree with that completely because you only want one Eels-Tigers game. We saw.
Yeah.
No, you got to have twice. You got to have the derbies.
So 40
twice a
games,
season.
40 games in a season.
No, but you put them into pools.
Okay.
You got to have pools.
Well, so you want them to swim?
Two Broncos, Cowboys games.
You want them to swim now,
Just when I thought I was having a serious conversation with you.
mate? This is not. Look, I get what you're saying, but when you start talking to me about pools and rankings, and I'm sorry, I'm a Westie. I'm a random Westie. I don't know what you're talking about.
There needs to be two Rabbitohs Roosters games. There has to be.
Why don't let them kick off the season or something? Let them have Anzac Day, whatever. Like it's
my problem with this other Brisbane team is we've only just got the Dolphins in there. They've only been around 3 years. Let's build up the rivalry with the Broncos. You know, if you bring another team in now, in a couple of years, you're just watering down that rivalry that's only just starting to kick off.
4 years. It's not going to happen for another 4 years at the very least, I'd say.
Well,
That's right.
They need longer. They need longer to establish that rivalry.
2030.
Put a Wellington team in. The Orcas. We need an Orcas in the competition.
Well, you can fund it when it falls on its face. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Don't you rate the Orcas as a mascot?
As a whale?
A killer whale.
No, not really.
They're feared.
Yeah, they're
Top of the
they're docile.
food chain. They're not docile at all.
They are. They blow shit out of their nose, out of the top of their head.
You're docile. Speaking of expansion,
What do they know?
I'm a tough orca. Look at this stuff in my head.
this is meant to be a hard-hitting podcast.
Oh, well, it is.
right?
You edit it so it is. So.
Okay, right. Speaking of expansion, the Perth Bears, Webby, you got a story in the Australian about some dramas behind the scenes. We like this.
Yeah, I thought it was about time I actually broke a story in my life. And David Sharpe, the GM of footy, his tenure will be discussed at a board meeting on Friday. They're not. There's people at that club who aren't particularly happy with Sharpe's performance. I've got to say, I thought it was a weird appointment. I know he's heavily credentialed. He comes from Sports Integrity Australia, and he was an assistant commissioner of the AFP before that. But that doesn't necessarily, and he's been in and around football. He's very close to Mal Meninga, and it was Mal's pick and Mal's decision. But I don't know if it was the right call, and certainly people at that club some of them aren't happy with David Sharpe. There's been a fallout with Anthony DeSegli, who some people think shouldn't be the CEO. So despite all that, there's all this great publicity around PNG at the moment. And I also think the Bears, or David Sharpe in particular, has been unhappy with the concessions that PNG get, i.e. the tax-free dollars. That said, though, there is a great story developing at Perth. Like, their squad that they're putting together, I think, is ahead of where the Dolphins were this far out. I reckon they'll be in the market for Matt Burton if Gus decides to let him go early. They're picking younger players. They're going the opposite way to the Dolphins, not necessarily getting older veterans. They've picked some really quality players out of the two dominant teams of the last 10 years, Melbourne and Penrith. So there's a great story there to be told at Perth, but these sort of politics is getting in the way of that story being told.
And MG, there's a doubleheader at Optus Stadium this weekend. Yeah. Actually, Raiders, Rabbitohs, Sharks, Roosters. Do they? I mean, there are still some critics of the Perth Bears being admitted to the NRL in the West as well.
Yeah.
Do they need to sell this place out or go close to selling out? Because people will jump all over it as evidence that...
what is it, 40,000? The Optus
60,000.
60, yeah, they won't sell it out, but they'll get 35, 40, I think, for the two games. And
that's a pass. You reckon that's a pass mark?
I think it's a pass mark. Yeah, I think it's a pass. And it's not there yet. I remember we played our first game against St George at the Wacker, and we had 25,000 turn up, and we beat the team that was favoured to win the comp in our first game. So we had a lot of momentum, but 3 weeks later, the Super League war started. So only if we would have found out how good we could have been over there. Besides the Super League, the only thing I got out of a lot of debt. That was all that I could. And I started to love Perth because I had 2 kids over there while I was there, and I just think it's a fantastic city. I'm biased. It kind of saved me from myself when I went there after signing with Peter Mulholland and Gordon Allen in 1993 when I was playing with the Tigers. So I couldn't wait to get there in 1995, and when I got there, it was everything I thought it'd be, and I can't wait for these guys to start assembling over in Perth in late September, early October to see exactly how good this place is.
The thing that I like about it, MG, is that they've been really, without talking too much out of school from the conversations I've had. There's certainly an element in that club that don't really want to embrace North Sydney.
Yeah.
It was a condition of their entry into the competition at the insistence of Peter V'landys. But there's certainly others there, and this is Mount Meninga included. They've really embraced the whole idea of the synergy with North Sydney, even though North Sydney aren't necessarily going to give them a stack of juniors or money or anything like that at all. But I think that the communication between the new franchise and North Sydney is starting to change, and I think they'd be mad not to try to foster that.
Webby, just on that, are they playing their one game? Is that still on the cards? Their one game in Sydney at North Sydney Oval?
I don't know if it'd be a North Sydney Oval.
But if you're going to do Bears, you've
you've
got to do it properly. You've got to do it at North Sydney Oval.
You'd think so.
You can't go to Allianz. I know you get more people there, but it would lose that.
But every time
Sydney Bears
every time
feeling.
the Bears play over in Sydney, they're going to have at least 5,000-6,000 people from the North Sydney faction.
More,
maybe more. I hope so. Hope more. So I think they will hit the ground running.
But where should they play that game?
I think they should play at Bear Park, North Sydney Oval. I love playing. I used to love coming up the stairs. The dressing room was underneath. It's just the greatest place. The big fig tree.
In Spud Carroll's award-winning...
the pub across the road was one of the best pubs in Sydney.
In Spud Carroll's autobiography, award-winning autobiography,
that you wrote,
Spud,
yep.
he did say he was getting on the back fence for a hit up from a kickoff, and he felt some rain, and he thought, oh gee, they weren't forecasting rain, and there were little kids in the tree spitting on him, on Spud.
I think I'd say piddling on him.
That's very un-North Sydney like. It was very genteel place, wasn't it?
Spudley. He must have rolled someone up.
I'll be watching it, not at North Sydney.
All right, we're to go. That's enough, Jibber. MG, great work.
See you soon, Webby. Bye-bye.
Andrew Webster. Look forward to your articles in Australia, mate. Thank you so much. And for all your NRL news, follow the Continuous Call team wherever you get your podcasts. It's your one-stop shop for the latest in rugby league. Share with your mates and leave a review. You can find us on YouTube and on Instagram. Just search the Continuous Call team. See you next time.